Hello and welcome to Patito's Gang. I'm Nana Jimie. Trading goods and services across borders is one of the strongest ways to actually improve a nation's economy. So why don't African countries trade with each other? Well, the gang has some interesting topics on this today. Let's hear from them.
This is Patito's Gang, and today we're talking free trade in Africa. Of course, as we all know, Nigerian president did not show up in Kigali to sign the African Free Trade Agreement. And this was the result of challenges thrown up by some stakeholders in Nigeria, and in a responsive mode, the government decided the president should not go to Kigali. But it raises the whole issue of free trade. Whenever trade is discussed, I like to make a very simple point about the history of the world that often is lost on people. The history of the world in the last couple of 100 years has been such that trade results in prosperity and growth of economies around the world. This prosperity, this growth gets to a point, some people begin to become sort of protective or defensive of the successes that they have had. And they retreat into policies that economists call beggar-thy-neighbor policies, the protection, tariffs, and all of this. And invariably, that leads to global recession. Now, when the recession comes, people begin to get fidgety, awkward, one small thing, and there's a major war. So the world has run a cycle of trade, prosperity, beggar-thy-neighbor policies, depression, war, and the cycle starts again. When Donald Trump showed up and came up with all this stuff, I just said, global history. We're getting ready for depression, we're getting ready for a war. It's there in global history. Anyhow, Africa has not enjoyed this prosperity as it should, largely because Africa has not participated adequately in free trade. Even in the trading that it participates in, it does more with people outside than with its neighbors. Trade within Asia is about 25% of the trade. In Africa is 33%. So the African peoples are being denied the prosperity that comes from exchange of goods and services. So the whole idea of an NAFTA was to essentially move. Interesting thing about it is that we gave notice. I mean, this thing has been on for 40 years or more. And we went through the Lagos Plan of Action, we went through the regional trading groups supposed to liberalize certain things and all of that. But for some reason, there's trouble with moving forward. Nigeria and South Africa did not sign. Interesting, because in many ways, these are the two leading economies on the continent. And the mindset really is, let's protect what we have. But is there more in front than we are protecting? That's really the question.
Yes, Prof, you know what? I think Nigeria will benefit more should we have free trade among Africans. You see, free trade has to do with numbers. South Africa, you just mentioned, are highly industrialized. And Nigeria, as we all know it, are not yet there. So we have micro businesses that can actually take advantage of free trade within the African Union into Nigerian system. So Nigeria not being part of that or resisting such change is actually costing us that we are gaining from it. I strongly believe that.
I don't have a problem with that. If you say allowing goods to flow into an economy where that is not industrialized, that manufacturing is expensive, there's no power, no good roads, and the goods flood in, they are cheaper than what is produced. The industry is in the country of
That is the argument,
Yes.
and it's not untrue, to put it that way. That is to say, it is true that we have these competitiveness challenges, the challenges that flow from poor infrastructure, and so on and so forth. But if you look at the evolution of the Nigerian economy, you will see that we have actually been in the throes of deindustrialization for many years. Even as late as the 80s,
Early 80s, I was going to say.
our manufacturing contributed up to 13% of GDP in
Yes.
Nigeria. Today it's barely 3%
Nothing.
of GDP.
Yes.
So we've been deindustrializing
Yeah.
because we began to lose competitiveness in the face of the nature of the structure of manufacturing in Nigeria, which came out of the import substitution industrialization strategy, the Prebisch thesis. What is sad is that in the 30 years during which we've been struggling with this deindustrialization, we have not managed to provide enough incentives for manufacturing in Nigeria, which is very important if we're going to create jobs for lots of people. We need to have a manufacturing economy. But we've not created the right incentives and attracted the right kinds of entrepreneurs to create value chains of factor endowments. That is to say, take something that Nigeria produces naturally, if you will, and then become globally competitive in its value chain.
That's exactly where I was going to go.
You know, but we're still in many industries in which we're not competitive. Then the problems of power, all the other infrastructure exacerbate those
The
problems.
problems, yes.
And if we can continue making those arguments and losing opportunities.
Yeah, but at some point, we have to take a step back to look at this thing holistically, to ask ourselves, are we better off not having a global trade with Africans, or are we better off as things have ever been? Because you just mentioned about industrialization. These things are natural cause. It happens here whether we like it or not. So the better, now I'll take an example. Most of the companies that we have here are not even competitive when it comes to quality of goods that they manufacture out there. So we need to unbundle this thing. We need to allow other people to come in, because at the end of the day, like I said, economics is more of numbers. We have the numbers.
I like to, in fact, take that argument further by saying we should not completely ignore the pains that those who have invested already are going to go through if we change strategy. Because the people who made commitments yesterday and have suffered pains will tell their stories and might even prevent new ones from coming. What we need is an incentive regime. Literally, I use this word, advisedly, it's almost like a wrong usage. We have to find a way of bribing those people into a transition in the nature of the manufacturing they are involved in. A set of incentives that will make them not just like lose everything, but not to, under their pressure, prevent, I like this Machiavelli quote, which I always throw out about change. Because nothing is more difficult to bring about than a new order of things. Because those who profit from the old order will do everything to prevent a new order from coming about. But here's the better part of the quote. Those who could profit from the new order do not do enough to make it happen. Because man is incredulous in his nature, not wanting to try new things until he has witnessed experience of it. You will find that there are always in the majority those who could profit from the new order. As the case now, if we actually go the way that this African Free Trade Agreement is calling for, more people will profit. But those few the more who will profit, either don't know enough, don't care enough, don't commit enough, and so the few who are in the old order will make more noise and may keep us.
I still strongly believe that Nigeria would be better off going into African free trade.
I think the challenge we face today, talking about the African continental free trade, is more of communication and governance challenges. Like Prof said at the introduction, the discussion concerning the continental free trade is more than 40 years old. started with the Lagos Plan of Action here at the National Theatre in Lagos in 1980. And the treaty to roll out the Economic Commission for Africa was signed in Abuja. Nigeria hosted the conference, the Summit of Head of State. In fact, that was what led to the establishment of the International Conference Center in Abuja today. So looking at 1980 to today, we're talking of about 48 years.
Yes.
So we knew this thing definitely was coming.
Yes.
But we treated it with levity. We didn't show the level of discipline and foresight that are required to prepare for it. All the economists have done that. So suddenly we woke up one day, about 2012.
Nigeria have to fall in the league of global economy. Whether we like it or not.
We cannot be an island.
Yeah, we cannot be an island.
No, we can't be an island.
Okay.
Because
on the question of whether we are going to be an island or a continent or whatever, let's take a break. Okay. When we come back, we'll decide what kind of island we want. We'll be right back.
The gang points out that African countries don't truly have a sense of camaraderie, trust, nor unity, and therefore they're not really inclined to trade with each other. Well, we'd love to hear your thoughts as well. Let's take it to the streets.
When the government is seen that way, it will be reduced. We don't want people that are just striving to get there.
My opinion is that Nigeria should sign the African Free Trade Agreement Treaty. The reason, Nigeria is a big country in Africa, you understand? We have the population, we have the market also. What that means is that Nigerian manufacturers can export their products to any country in Africa free of tariffs, free of custom duties, free of anything. That's the meaning of that. But the problem there is that Nigeria does not have the infrastructure to manufacture enough goods of high quality that we compete with other African countries like South Africa, that has all the infrastructures you can think about. And another problem, the EU and the Chinese and other people can go through the other countries to bring goods to Nigerian market. So if we don't have the infrastructure, power, roads, and whatever, transportation to compete with these people, it is going to be a disadvantage to Nigeria. But the truth is that signing the African Free Trade Agreement will help Nigeria to develop its infrastructure, especially in the manufacturing sector.
Okay, there are many issues. I mean, Rashid, you are raising issues around governance and co. What are the critical things that need to be done, given where we're coming from on this track?
Yeah, I think the discipline that is most often absent in what we do as a country, it's rarely said again in this continental free trade. We knew the roadmap, we had a copy of the roadmap, but we kept it in the battle. We wanted to wake up one morning and they said Africa is ready. And Nigeria had forgotten, we brought it back to Abuja, but sorry, we could not circulate it and we could not implement it. That's the price we are paying for lack of discipline. All other countries went ahead and did what was needed to do. They did consultation because the program started 2012 and actual negotiation commenced 2016. And the roadmap indicated that the indicative year to commence the free trade was 2017, which is already last year. But we didn't do anything until Africa was ready to sign. And then we came back and said, no, we are not ready, or we can sign now and then talk later. But that's not the way trade agreements run. Similar to the EPA with the European Union, the same thing we are suffering today. It affects micro, small, medium, and large companies. Even multinational companies, some will exit if the crisis is there. So now that the deal is done, 44 countries have signed it. South Africa went to Kigali. We all know in trade that trade treaty is nothing but trade liberalization. You're going to open up your market to a certain percentage. The Kigali declaration was quite ambitious, talking of 90% tariff liberalization within 15 years. That was quite heavy. Yes. Particularly on developing industries, it was quite heavy, a shock for them to absorb. Secondly, the treaty makes it quite clear what you need to do. We didn't do the needful at the right time. South Africa went to Kigali, and when they saw what happened, because for any trade liberalization to run smoothly, there are two components of protocol that needed to have been thoroughly trashed out at the foundation level. That's the tariff to be dismantled, and then rules of origin to guide exchange of goods within each other country. We went there when South Africa realized that the tariff schedule was not ready, the rules of origin had not been negotiated. South Africa backed out of signature. But immediately the Kigali meeting ended, that very day, the South African government issued a statement why they did not sign. Nigeria went to Kigali. We suspected the documents were not ready because our chief negotiator here in Nigeria happens to be the chief negotiator for the entire continent. So we're quite aware I was on top of the issues. We knew the tariff schedule were not ready and rules of origin had not even commenced negotiation. So Nigeria was not there, and we did not issue any statement to let the world know why did we not go to Kigali. South Africa took the shine. Nobody's blaming the South African government for not signing today. But in Nigeria, things are kept in the dark because of part of a lack of proper governance and transparency.
I really don't believe that the reason why we have not joined is because there was a communication gap. We need to look critical into how Nigeria operates. There must be some forces, some people. I don't want to invoke external forces that doesn't exist. There must be some people who strongly believe that if we become part of African free trade, that their businesses, their factories or whatever would suffer. So they are doing everything consistently to make sure that it does not see the light of the day. That is my suspicion. But
are you trying to say that these people held back the treaty?
I would think so, because
yes.
because you see, if you look at this thing holistically, you will understand that yes, some industries in Nigeria might not actually stand, may not survive. And those who stand a chance of not surviving will do everything in their power. But we need to be educated that
the government, that's why the government is that bitter. In any change, there will be losers and winners.
Yes.
Government is the central authority to
balance all these things.
Yes, to balance it.
Yes.
So if you leave the losers on their own, they have every natural right to fight back and do their best.
Yeah.
But if having studied the environment,
that's what I talk about incentives,
you are able to
losers.
identify who the losers and the gainers will be.
The other day, I learned that our president was going to go to this and to sign an agreement, and he was really stopped or advised not to.
Now, when the African Union was ready, because there have been meetings, there were really 4. This year alone, we had 4 meetings. There was a meeting in Kigali by the African Ministers of Trade, met Kigali. They met in Nairobi, they met in Dubai in South Africa, and the last meeting was in Abuja.
Yes.
So they were not secret meetings.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. But wasn't it man that stopped the president from signing?
Look, as I said at the business law conference.
Yes. When the Federal Executive Council met and advised Mr. President to go to Kigali, man naturally raised questions. Where is the tariff liberalization schedule? You can't shave my head in my absence. They needed to see the tariff lines that will go. And I'm aware that man has been making counter proposal that rather than have 50% in 90% liberalization, what should have done was to relieve the operators, is to sequence the schedule. Make it first 5 years 30%.
Yeah, but there are provisions in the African Continental Free Trade Agreement to adjust all of those things.
Okay.
And go. But the thing is that we sometimes just get into these things and take a position without thinking bigger picture, thinking the future. Manufacturers have suffered a lot in this environment. There is no question about that. But to prevent Nigeria from reaping greater benefits by just looking at their fear of what they will lose, it's worse for Nigeria. I think that we need to have some dialogue that people understand each other, incentives, cross incentives, so that we can make progress and profit from trade. That's really where the challenge is today. I think that this, I was speaking, like I said, at the Business Law Conference conference on this matter. And I was trying to make the point that manufacturers were saying that they've not been briefed enough. And I said, look, let's be very frank. I used to be a National Council of Man, and you used to be Director General of that organization. If you hold meetings every day for the next 1 year with Man, they will still complain. Because it's a natural interest position. And people hold positions and they will stick it out. So what we must ask ourselves, what's the best interest of Nigeria? And how do we profit from it through this Continental Free Trade Agreement?
I'm still worried.
Yes, macro enterprises and all of those, we worry. But do you know that those who are most affected by cross-border trading are women? They're the ones who take all these.
Small things across the border.
A Continental Free Trade Agreement will make life easier for them, prevent these customs officers from abusing them, literally.
Yes.
So
yes.
there are so many benefits.
I think there's a lot of benefit to what you have.
And the other thing is that when you look at these issues, everybody's frustrated in many ways. When this thing started out, governments seem to be falling. The continental organizations, multilateral agencies, what do they call them? African Development Bank and co. try to circumnavigate government because they saw government a problem. Babacar Ndiaye, as president of African Development Bank in the late 80s, created the Africa Business Roundtable as a way of bringing African businessmen closer so that they can begin to trade amongst each other and get over this. And I personally, physically carried some of the letters he sent to Nigeria from Cote d'Ivoire. I think I brought Ibru's own, I brought Bamanga Tukru's own, and Africa Business Roundtable fell into lethargy, whether we accept it or not. And Jean-Louis Ekra, when he was president of the Afri-Exim Bank, tried to create a different platform. It was called PathTrack. And again, for some reason, I was present at that meeting in Cairo where this was created. And William Mugomba, irony of ironies, who Babacar Ndiaye replaced as president of the African Development Bank, was elected president of PathTrack. But William Mugomba died shortly after.
Oh, no.
So, anyhow, it is nothing new. We must do something to get continental trade going. That's where we'll end.
The gang urges African countries to come together, trade together, to improve the general welfare of the continent. Free trade will help us to strengthen our relationships, and it will also give us an opportunity to compete with other world powers. Well, that's all that we have time for today on Patito's Gang. Thank you for joining us. We hope you found today's episode to be informative and enlightening. Join the conversation. Follow us on all our social media pages, displayed right there on your screen. I am Nenna Jemie. And until next time, take care and be well.